we're heading down. This part of Washington is called West End, where you're staying. How am I coming in back there? Can you hear me? And we're heading west right now, and we're heading into. Well, let's go down through Georgetown, Shake, and we'll come back down Embassy Row that way. Let's go down to 28th Street. But we're going to head to Georgetown. Now, Georgetown is part of Washington. Washington, when the new capital city, because there was nothing here at the time, when the new capital was being thought of and then later designed and laid out, we would have been in the state of Maryland, colony of Maryland first, and then this would have been part of the state of Maryland initially in the late 18th century. And Maryland, the state of Maryland, and the state of Virginia, which is over here a little bit, just on the other side of the Potomac River, contributed land. It was a complicated process, but contributed land essentially to create the new nation's capital in 1790, and that's when the deal was finalized. So Washington D.C. is composed of land donated from Maryland and Virginia, or at least it was, and in 1790. So in 1790, the city was shaped like a perfect diamond,
right,
with the Capitol building right in the middle. And there were 4 sections of the city that were all equal parts of that diamond, 4 quadrants of this diamond. And northeast, northwest, where we are right now, we're now in northwest, southeast, and southwest. And the city looked like this for about 55 years until 1846. And in 1846, Virginia, which had donated Arlington and Alexandria to help, create the city, took its donation back. So now Washington looks like this, a diamond with a big chunk missing from the southwestern corner, and that missing chunk is Virginia's donation, Arlington and Alexandria, which went back to Virginia in 1846, 15 years before the Civil War starts. So when the Civil War begins in 1861, you've got, this is the United States, and on the other side of the Potomac River, which is right over here, is Virginia. So if you're over here, you're looking across the Potomac River at 2 former communities, once part of your city, and you're looking at enemy territory, and of course people over there in Virginia, or in Arlington, Alexandria, let's say, are looking across the Potomac River at Washington. They're looking at a city they were once part of, and that's now enemy territory. So the geopolitical history of this area is absolutely unbelievable. And Georgetown, where we're about to be in about maybe 50 feet, was a city in Maryland, very wealthy port city in Maryland. Like Alexandria was a very prosperous port city on the Potomac River, on the other side of the river in Virginia. So there was Georgetown is about 150, maybe 200 years older than Washington, because Washington didn't exist when Alexandria and Virginia came into being. But this was a city in Maryland named after King George II. And it's been around for quite a while, as you'll see here. So this is like driving around through a fixed-up version of the 18th century, where we are right now. And homes here are very expensive, even something little like this little red thing here. I mean, can start at $1 million. Because people want to say at cocktail parties, they live in Georgetown. So you're going to have to pay for that privilege. And everything is first, you see, I saw a for sale sign there, but you see those every now and then, but usually everything is very carefully handled through, word of mouth by real estate agents. But a lot of interesting people have lived in Georgetown, and in some cases still do. But it's about a 200 or 300 square block neighborhood now in Washington. But it was at one time a separate city. There's some interesting Kennedy-related things up here. This is kind of funny, but there's a big house looming up on the left there. That was lived in most recently by Ben Bradley and Sally Quinn. And Ben Bradley was the executive editor of the Washington Post during the Watergate era, the Woodward and Bernstein era in the paper's history. Right across the street here lived a woman named Louise Goor, who was John Mitchell's girlfriend. And John Mitchell went to prison as a result of the Watergate scandal, moves in with his girlfriend across the street, so for a long time he lived across the street from really the guy who sent him to prison. Ben Bradley, next door neighbors. Jacqueline Kennedy lived in this house. This was the last house in Washington she ever lived in. After Kennedy was shot, She lived in the White House for a couple of weeks. Then she moved in with her friend Pamela Harriman, who was married to Averell Harriman, who had been U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union during World War II. She moved into this house here for about a month on the corner, this one, with the no parking sign out in front, 3038N. And then she moves across the street to that house I pointed out. She lived there until maybe the late spring of 1964, and everyday reporters and photographers out in front of her house, and just got sick of it and moved to New York. So that's the last place she ever lived in Washington, and never moved back here. In fact, rarely came here. But as you can see, one of the problems in Georgetown is parking. I mean, if you get a parking space, you just keep it for this long, a couple of years. There are parking stickers, so you have zone parking stickers that let you park, in front of your house forever. But if you don't live here and you don't have a sticker, you can. The limit's usually 2 hours, something like that. There were garages in the back. I mean, these houses in the 17th, 18th centuries. I mean, there was property tax. There wasn't income tax or corporate taxes or anything like that, but there was property tax and tariffs and tolls and things. This is how municipalities and colonial governments collected money. But the property taxes in places, let's say like Georgetown, were based on how much street front your house took up. So people tended to build narrow homes that were like deep. And if you look here at some of these buildings, if you can see the sides of them, they go back real far, and you got big yards in the back in some cases. This was like Lyndon Johnson's favorite bar, John Kennedy's favorite bar, Billy Martin's across the street. In fact, John Kennedy proposed to Jacqueline Kennedy in there.
Oh, wow.
Jacqueline Bouvier. I mean, no idea what she was getting into, of course. But
you can also pick
Nixon used to hang out there. We were driving down the street a couple of months ago and stopped at the light there, like that woman on the bike is. And I'm talking about something, I can't remember what I was talking about, but out of the Billy Martins comes Tucker Carlson, and the people in the back really liked him, and they hopped out, and we're all talking for like about a half an hour. But you just never know who you're going to run into around here. And there's some restaurants, and you can maybe look back that way. That one's not too deep. And here you get an idea. And see if there were carriage houses in the back that have been turned into guest houses and things like that, and their driveways and alleys. Washington's got a lot of alleys. And we're heading up towards Georgetown University. Remember when Maryland was a colony? I mean, this was part of the colony of Maryland, later the state of Maryland. Maryland was a Catholic colony. And it's where Catholics who were being persecuted in England would come and freely practice their religion and all.
Wow,
and
gas lamps are still working.
A lot of Catholics living in this area even now, as a result of that. Georgetown was here, the first and largest Catholic university. This is John Kennedy's. Shake, hold on here just 1 second. This is the last house that John and Jacqueline Kennedy lived in. So he bought this house in 1957. They lived here. As the last private home, I should say, not the last house, but they lived here until 1961. January 61, of course, they moved into the White House. He's elected president in November of 1960. So this is the last private home John Kennedy ever lived in. And it's funny to look at. In fact, I was watching something about the Cuban Missile Crisis the other day, and Kennedy's out in front of this house. I mean, he inherited all of that from Eisenhower. Look at the brickwork on some of these things. But he inherited the invasion of Cuba from the CIA, essentially, that had thought it up during the Eisenhower administration. And it probably led, I think the Soviet Union was probably involved in his assassination. I'm sure the invasion of Cuba and the attempts to kill Castro that were going on for pretty much all of the Kennedy administration had a lot to do with why he was assassinated. But, just a guess. The most bizarre weekend in American history, that's for sure.
The ornate stairways are gorgeous.
Oh, everything is interesting.
Yeah.
It's just a fascinating place. Georgetown used to be a place where a lot of writers would live, a lot of politicians, people obviously independently wealthy. just hanging around and enjoying themselves. If you look down this is sort of the college part of town. There's not much to the college part of town around Georgetown because there's so much of Georgetown down the street here. And here's some kids at the Catholic schools here. Okay, kids, line up. Ask permission to cross the street. So that's Virginia. If you look at those buildings there, those
on the other side of the Potomac.
On the other side of the Potomac River. That's the state of Virginia. So this is how close the United States and the Confederacy were
Wow, I had no idea
during the Civil War.
this high.
Georgetown, I mean, but Maryland, you got to remember, I mean, Maryland had a tradition of slave ownership, and the southern 6 counties in Maryland were tobacco-growing counties, and slavery was an institution there. And in the northern part of Maryland, I mean, apples and pears and things like that. I mean, everything was agriculture. The big industry, of course, everywhere was agriculture, and the northern part of Maryland was all apple orchards and things like that. You didn't need slaves to do that, but tobacco was a very labor-intensive crop.
Right.
And so the southern 6 counties in Maryland were tobacco-growing counties, and they had all the political power and all the money and everything. And so Maryland was like a half-slave, half-free area before the Civil War started. And there's how close Virginia is. And of course, a big chunk of northern Virginia was quickly under the control of the United States within about a couple of weeks. I mean, after the war started, and it was all occupied Confederate territory for pretty much the whole length of the war. Here's Georgetown University. So this is the oldest Catholic college/university in the country. And this opened for business in 1789. The year that George Washington became president, and the year of the French Revolution. So this has been churning out. Here comes some right now. The leaders of tomorrow, over here. This is where Bill Clinton went to college.
Oh, really?
And I think it's about $50,000 or $60,000. Anybody would pay $50,000 or $60,000 to syndicate to college now, given all the. Oops, we can't go down that street. So this is like. This has become a ritual now. You take your kid to look at colleges,
Yeah.
and it's an industry in itself.
Right.
So you've got a student out here who's being paid to calm the parents down and get them more comfortable with giving the school $60,000.
We've done a few of those with Trevor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So we were in Alexandria yesterday.
You were in Alexandria. Same kind of a place.
Yep.
Same kind of a
Yeah,
place.
very similar.
And there are a lot of cities on the East Coast, like Charleston looks like this, Savannah looks like this.
Been to Savannah. Yeah.
Parts of bigger cities look like this. I mean, parts of Philadelphia look like this. Parts of New York look like this. And then around in the surrounding area here, there are all kinds of little villages and towns. I mean, you feel like, except for the cars, you feel like you're back in the 18th century. It's just amazing.
Everything's so clean. There's no graffiti.
No, they really keep Washington clean. I mean, historic preservation and maintaining the look of not just Georgetown. Well, people in Georgetown take it very seriously. But
sure, you're paying that much for a house.
You don't want, all kinds of disgusting stuff spray painted on your house. But historic preservation is a religion around here. In Washington, the laws governing, preservation are as strict as anything you can imagine. Maybe let's go down Shake and go buy some of those things over there, and then we'll head up Wisconsin. But we're going to be all over the whole area here.
Excellent.
But I mean, if a structure has even the slightest historic significance, now that doesn't, but it's sandwiched among some things that do, you can tell the newer things. I mean, you can't touch the architecture. You can't touch the exterior architecture. More Catholic school kids.
Or you can't change it.
Or maybe they're the same ones. Well, you can't alter it. You can do things inside a building that's got
cobblestone.
Has historic
Oh my gosh, cobblestone street.
cobblestone streets. And see, the streetcar tracks here, they stopped. There was no streetcar service after like 1962 or something like that. You imagine driving a car down a street with a streetcar coming? And big 1950s sized cars.
Right.
Nobody can go anywhere. That's why they got rid of them. But people like, the ye old look here. And if you tear the streetcar tracks up, you have to tear up the cobblestones. And
Right.
No, we want the cobblestones. But here's what these things. This is where John Kerry lived, the former Secretary of State. Lived in that house there. But some of these things, I'm telling you, into the 30s, 30 millions.
What?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think they started around a million, maybe 850,000 for some little dinky thing, and then go up. The sky's the limit. And this is not the most expensive neighborhood in Washington by any means, but I mean, these homes are expensive. But it would be, as I said, it would be a place where politicians would tend to automatically want to live. But now Washington is a bad word politically. If the voters back home think you're spending too much time in Washington, or you're part of the Georgetown cocktail circuit, or the Washington, establishment.
That's like a bad thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
very bad. I mean, Washington means greed, deception. I mean, every bad, like the 7 deadly sins. Avarice, gluttony, lust, envy. What are the 7 deadly sins? Lust, avarice, gluttony, sloth. That's not... Well, sloth would be...
Slothfulness, yeah.
Yeah, I think sloth would be a problem here, because you get kind of used to, like, being served and everything. Waiting on hand and foot. That used to be a movie theater.
Such a cute town.
Yeah,
Everything's
it's
so walkable.
everything's walkable, and it's fun just to wander around Georgetown and come into go into some little boutique kind of restaurant, have a cup of coffee or something, and just sit and listen to people.
Our town's really, Camarillo's got one street. The
Well,
old
it's small.
street.
It's Camarillo's are small.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you don't walk anywhere.
Well, people in California tend not to walk.
Yeah.
I mean, because everything, unless you lived in, Santa Monica, people wander around there.
Right.
There's some places where people walk. Venice, people walk. Anything along the coast there. Santa Barbara, in some of the areas of Santa Barbara, people walk.
Yeah.
State Street.
State Street,
State
people
Street,
walk up
yeah.
and down State Street, and then and then Mission and all that, And people walk on the beach in California. I mean, people walk along that long walkway.
Yeah.
It's Venice, from
Yep.
from Santa Monica to Venice.
Down the Torrens.
Mm-hmm. And you can walk, I think, all the way to Redondo Beach or something on that thing.
Oh, past it. You can
Yeah.
go all the way down to Torrens.
You can.
Yeah.
Wow, I've never done that, but man, that's amazing.
Yeah, I used to ride bikes down that.
So you can ride a bike from on that sidewalk.
Yeah.
From Santa Monica to Torrance.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's a great ride.
Yeah, and it's all flat too.
Right.
So we are heading up Wisconsin Avenue. Again, this is the commercial part of Georgetown. And you notice, nothing, I mean, there would be a McDonald's here, but they'd have to conform to the look of it. I mean, we'll probably
That's
see
where
something.
Trevor works.
That's where Trevor works.
Trevor
Yeah.
works at a McDonald's?
Yeah.
Handing out Happy Meals?
Yeah.
Well, hey, you got to get started somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a busboy, and I used to I'll tell you, man, your assessment of human beings after you've worked in a restaurant is like zero. Oh my God, you go, what pigs?
Yeah, definitely.
Isn't that the first thought that occurs to you?
Within the first week.
Within the first week, human beings are absolute pigs. But it's a good thing, it's a good lesson. Plus, you don't want to eat certain things forever.
Yeah.
Like McDonald's French fries and stuff.
The gas is so much cheaper here. Oh my God.
Gas is cheaper.
We were shocked.
Well, the taxes aren't as high. In California, you're paying for all kinds of stuff that you would never
Yeah.
be paying for around here.
Right now, they're considering another 16 cents on diesel and another 14
Well, it's
on
losing its population. California, for the first
Yeah.
time in its history, is losing its population. That's why. See these things? I love these little signs and things like advertising whatever
Yeah.
it is that's for sale in there. Turn this thing off. Hey, Brendan, I'll call you later on. Okay, bye. So we are sort of gradually getting onto Georgetown, and you see a sign like used books. I'm going to go in there, and you just go in and talk and hang around.
That's cool. So, with the that used bookstore with the with the blue trim, does that always have to stay blue trim?
Oh, I don't know about the colors. I think you couldn't paint it purple probably. I think you couldn't paint it some outlandish. I'm sure there's some approved colors.
So
But
it's like a
everybody sort of-
giant HOA.
Yeah, everybody sort of senses
You
what you
would
can and can't do.
Yeah. I would not like a giant HOA.
Yeah. So we are now entering a neighborhood called Glover Park. And there are a couple of things about Washington you need to know. First of all, Congress runs the city as the Constitution designed it. So there's an elected mayor and an elected city council, and that's been the case since the 70s. But they don't have any power to do anything dramatic unless Congress agrees. I mean, they can, parking tickets and property taxes and stuff like that. But they can't do anything. For example, the local voters about 2 years ago passed a marijuana referendum making marijuana legal, like it is in California.
Yeah.
Medical marijuana, I guess. Maybe every kind of marijuana. I can't remember what it was. And Congress said, "Oh, you're not doing that. No way." So it's no matter what the voters or what the city wants to do, the politicians in the city want to do, it has to pass congressional muster, otherwise it's not going to happen. And they do that all the time. And if you look at the license plates, I mean, people who live in Washington politically are much different from people who live in other parts of the country. I mean, here comes a DC license. On the license, usually license plates have some kind of tourist hype on them, like land of the Sunshine State or something like that. It says taxation without representation. People who live in Washington are not represented in Congress by voting members of that. There's nobody in the Senate.
Right.
But they have a non-voting delegate in the House like Puerto Rico does, or Guam.
Oh, that's so weird.
So they can vote in committee, but they can't vote on the House floor, the one delegate.
So the people that live here, they don't like that.
Maybe like 3%.
Oh.
Nobody cares.
Oh.
Because if you the city it was run by a board of commissioners that Congress appointed. It's been everything. It's been a territory. It's been a wholly owned subsidiary of Congress. And it was when I was a kid, a board of commissioners ran the city, and they were appointed by Congress. And everything, it worked okay. But the minute people started running for office, it got more expensive. And Congress, because about half the city is federal property that can't be taxed, Congress gives the city, it's called the federal payment. It gives the city, right now it's somewhere like $8 or $9 billion a year, in lieu of the taxes that could be collected from federal land.
Oh, okay.
So that's a big chunk of what is used to operate the place. So we are heading through Glover Park.
Yeah, it's interesting seeing the character change.
It's becoming a little bit more like a suburb. Yes, more or less. And now we're getting into an area with a lot of embassies. This is much, much, much in the news right now. This particular embassy. This is the Russian embassy on the left up here, surrounded by the fence.
Oh, wow.
So this is the Russian embassy compound.
There's Russia, you guys.
And so if you walk in there, this is Russian sovereign territory. Maybe pull over by the bus stop here for a bit. Not too close. The bus is probably coming up the street. But this was built to be the Soviet embassy. So this was built in the construction started in the 1980s. But the Soviet Union and the United States both realized they needed new embassy buildings in their respective capitals. So they signed an agreement to let each other build new buildings, and the Americans used Russian workers in Moscow to build the embassy, to replace the one they'd always had from 1933 to the 80s, and when they did a security check when it was all done, it had been bugged from top to bottom. The KGB had built the USM and just sat like an abandoned high school or something.
So what did they do about that?
Well, they eventually just tore it down, they built one in Texas, and then took it apart and brought it piece by piece to Moscow and set it up there.
Wow.
So they just had to destroy it.
Oh.
I mean, it was funny to look at it, but the Russians, of course, aren't naive in those areas, and they brought their own workers and hammers and nails and saws and everything and built this. And so it was designed to be the Soviet embassy, but halfway through the construction project, the Soviet Union fell apart. And so this opened in 1994, about 3 years after the Soviet Union collapsed. They moved into this one. But it's in the highest part of Washington, and so you can listen to conversations in the White House, the Pentagon.
See the flowers
It's a brilliant
out there?
move. Brilliant move. What about them?
That's odd that they're there.
Well, they like flowers.
No, there's the bombing last week in Russia.
Oh, there was. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what it's for. Yeah, there
That's
was
like
a
memorial.
metro
Yeah.
bombing in St. Petersburg. Yeah. Yep. Of that, those flowers. I didn't notice those. By the guardhouse there.
Yeah.
But everybody who works there lives there. I mean, they don't bring in anybody to
That's the
like
whole
trim the
compound.
flowers or trim the hedges or anything because they know they'd be spies.
Yeah.
Oh, so those are Russians right there, guys.
Hey, look, a real Russian.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I tell you, when
Our
this was
heritage.
when this was the Soviet Union, they didn't wander around in short pants.
Yeah,
That guy may
yeah.
or might be a Russian. In fact, they didn't wander around at all. Everything was very carefully managed.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But the FBI figures it out. Look up the street here. The FBI figured out what the Russians were doing here at this particular location. It took them a while, I guess. And they took over the top floor in that condo building up there. Look at all the listening devices
Yeah.
on the roof of that building up ahead on the left. So that's the FBI listening to the Russians, listening to the Americans.
Oh my gosh.
Look at that.
That's amazing. Does the compound continue behind?
Oh,
these
yeah,
buildings
it's
here?
huge. It's
Oh,
gigantic.
okay.
That's the largest embassy in Washington, the Russian embassy. I remember one time hearing a joke in Moscow. Russians like big, like the Bolshoi Theater
Right.
means big. Bolshoi means big in Russian.
Oh.
The Bolshoi Theater means the big theater. But there was a joke in Russian, if the Russians ever get around to inventing a computer chip, it'll be the biggest computer chip in the world. And let's go up, we'll go around that little driveway at National Cathedral. This is the highest point. Well, here's some more FBI listening stuff up here. This is Cathedral Heights where we are. This is National Cathedral. This is the 6th largest cathedral in the world here. And the site of 3 presidential funerals, Reagan's, Eisenhower's, and Ford's, all took place here. But this is like stepping into the Middle Ages. And this whole area here is the campus, I guess. St. Albans School for Boys, we just passed. This is National Cathedral School for Girls, paid for by William Randolph Hearst's mother, Lucy Hearst.
Mm.
And this is appropriately Hearst Hall here named after her. In the days when state legislatures appointed members of the Senate, which gave states even more control over things that went on in Washington than they have now. Of course, they had ultimate control earlier when the states governed themselves under the Articles of Confederation. But state legislatures used to appoint the senators, the 2 senators from each state. Here's National Cathedral. There's an earthquake here in Washington in 2011, and they're still kind of fixing it up. But this is stunning inside.
Oh, I bet that's gorgeous.
Yeah, it is amazing. It took about 82 or 3 years to build this. Construction started when Teddy Roosevelt was president in 1907. It was finished when George Bush the Elder was president.
Oh my gosh.
And a big celebration, of course, when it was completed. So that's National Cathedral, and this is National Cathedral School for Girls. But Hearst's father was appointed to the U.S. Senate. So he and his wife moved here, and that's his wife from the rear up there.
Mm.
And she was looking around for philanthropic things to get involved in, and she decides to fund that building, that school.
Yeah, I was at the opening of the Reagan Library with the 5 presidents.
That's a nice place.
Yeah.
I like that place.
That was a.
I love the road up there with all the banners.
All
with
the banners of the presidents.
Yeah,
Yeah.
really, really nice.
I was.
That's nice to have that there.
Bob Hope was right in front of me, and
Isn't that
Schwarzenegger was right to
amazing.
my side.
Amazing.
It was pretty cool. It was a great day.
Yeah, that's a great facility there. The library is amazing. So we're going to cut down through this neighborhood we're going to be in a couple of minutes. It's called Cleveland Park. This used to be this part of Washington in the middle of the 19th century. None of this stuff was here. This was all woods, and it's a little higher. And as you go farther north, which is the way we're pointing right now, you get even higher. You keep going up until you get into the mountains, really, in Maryland. But it was a place where people moved in the summer. Washington, for much of its history, and the early history, was like a malarial swamp. It was all swampland. It was gradually filled in. And people, to get away from that stuff in the summer, would move to the higher elevations, like where we are, for example, where it's a little cooler and fewer mosquitoes and stuff like that. So this was kind of a resort area in the middle of the 19th century, and it gradually became, a community. Get it right close. I remember when I was in college, watching Dwight Eisenhower's funeral here in 1969, and a friend of mine and I were standing right on this hill, and saw Charles de Gaulle walk up this driveway, and Bernard Montgomery, all these people from World War II. It was just absolutely amazing. And Richard Nixon, who had just been inaugurated. And about 20 years later, maybe 1990, I was working for the LA Times in Moscow, and Nixon was sent on a fact-finding mission by George Bush as the Soviet Union was going through all kinds of, nobody had any idea it was going to just fall apart, and Nixon was sent over to see what was going on. And I had been sent down to Georgia to interview the president of Georgia, this guy Zviad Gamsahurdia. And I'm sitting in the lobby outside this guy's office, and I'd completely forgotten about Nixon. And the door to this guy's office opens up, and out walks Richard Nixon.
Oh, wow.
And I look at him, and I go, oh my God, it's Nixon. And I introduced myself, and I couldn't think of anything to say, and I said, I saw you at Dwight Eisenhower's funeral, which was like, part of it came right up this driveway here. And he looks at me like, who the hell are you? And he was putting his coat on, he starts taking it off, and he puts it down on a chair, and he starts talking about how that was the most interesting afternoon he'd ever spent in his life. Wow. And seeing all these World War II generals, he said, I thought half these guys were dead. And he said there was a sort of a wake afterwards at a party, and he was talking to these people, and he puts his coat back on for about 10 minutes of this, and he says to me, quite a gathering, young man, quite a gathering. So my two run-ins with Richard Nixon. But we are in Cleveland Park. Again, this is another neighborhood. Another thing you got to remember about Washington. There are over 3,000 counties in the United States. And 6 of the 10 wealthiest counties in America surround Washington. Not Los Angeles, not New York, not Chicago, not any other place, but Washington. So the money is just flying around here. And everybody's trying to get their hands on some of it. I remember some, I think it was a woman. We were doing a tour, and she said something to me like, gee, it must be so exciting here, and people all wondering who the president's going to be. And I said, you know what? People in Washington aren't like that. And I said, I used to cover the Baltimore, when I got first into newspaper writing, I was working for the Baltimore Sun and covered the Baltimore Orioles for about 3 years. And something struck me about baseball players. They're not fans of baseball. They're not fans of the game. They don't care, or they don't know about, or even if they do, they don't care about the history of baseball, like sort of baseball nerds do. They're not fans of the game. The only thing they cared about was making as much money as they could in the shortest possible time, and not getting hurt, so they could continue making money. And people in Washington are like that. They're not fans of politics the way people like outside the country are. I mean, if you work on Capitol Hill, like my son just called me. I mean, if he works for a member of Congress, and if the guy loses, if his boss loses, he doesn't have a job.
Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty easy to find another one, on Capitol Hill especially. But if you got a track record. But, I mean, he's out of a job. So in that sense, you care. But, I mean, if there's a new administration, you're just trying to figure out, how do I make money from whoever is in power in the White House, or how do I make money no matter who has the majority on the Hill? How do I make money no matter what the situation is? That's your driving ambition.
That's so weird.
And you don't care. I mean, you might pretend to at cocktail parties, but you really don't care. Or if you're a pundit, you have to have some point of view.
Yeah.
So to make money, so you pretend to care. And you may really care. If you really care, you're going to probably be kind of boring. Because you want to be more an analyst of how it happens and what's happening and what it all means, and that's what consultants do, and lobbyists do that. They explain what it all means to their clients, who are befuddled by everything. So here we are. We're coming into a lot of embassies now. Here's Norway. We just passed Azerbaijan, former Soviet Republic. Here's Norway. And a lot of these embassy buildings were once private homes that got just added on to or taken over, or, bought or leased or whatever. And the people who lived in these things couldn't pay the upkeep anymore. The descendants couldn't. They go, you know what, we should all sell this. Or give it over to a diplomatic property real estate agent and lease it.
Bug any of these?
Oh, absolutely. Well, bug?
Yeah.
You don't have to.
Listen.
Well, you don't have. I mean, look what the FBI is doing up there.
Yeah.
You don't really have to.
Just listen to him.
You just listen. Oh, sure. And
What's the facility in front of us?
that is well,
Oh,
this
it's
this is the
okay.
vice president's house, and it's going to be kind of tough to see. There's a big white wooden frame house through the trees. You may or may not be able to see this, but these are the grounds of the Naval Observatory, and there's the official time on the East Coast, at least, of the United States, where the official time is kept here. You can see a little bit of the observatory straight ahead up there.
Yeah.
But if you look to the right through the trees here, you might be able to catch a glimpse of this big white frame house. So that's where Mike Pence lives.
Oh, okay.
Does the vice president always live there?
He has since the 70s.
Oh.
This is the Vatican Embassy on the left. Here's Finland
Oh,
on the left, celebrating its 100th.
Interesting.
Finland celebrated its 100th anniversary in 1917. It used to be part of the Russian Empire, and when the Bolsheviks took over in 1917, the Finns said, "This is our chance. We're out of here." And they fought the Russians for a little while, but the Russians had bigger things. Every now and then, some insane guy in the Russian parliament will say, we need to get Finland back, and the Finns will go completely berserk. It'll be like headline news,
Oh my god.
and everybody in Finland's a little bit like Israel, like surrounded. Used to be during the Cold War. I mean, surrounded. You got a country with 11 time zones on your to your east. You know,
Jeez.
looming, and they could crush you. But everybody is in the army, and highways in the country turn into airports and stuff. It's just amazing. The whole country is ready for war with Russia.
This is a British embassy.
This is the British embassy. This is the second largest embassy in Washington. Yeah, this is Britain. That does look like a high school. Look at the British ambassador's house, though. This is not. This is probably about $120 million here, and of course they They might sell at some point. Who knows? Statue of Winston Churchill out front. They got their own greenhouse. Look at this. Here's the South African embassy on the left. Here's Bolivia on the right. This is the former Iranian embassy. This was seized along with all Iranian assets during the hostage crisis, and the United States still holds it. This is Brazil on the right, and this is the Brazilian ambassador's house. I mean, this was somebody's house. Let's go up. Let's go up here. We can go up and take a look at Hillary. We'll show you where Hillary Clinton lives.
They're all so close together.
They're all so close together, yeah. Here's Italy on the right. So this is Hillary Clinton Street. But imagine the people who lived in this when this was a private home. I mean, the kind of lives people lived.
Right.
If some of these things are owned by the countries that use them as embassies, some are leased, you know. Sometimes they'll build one, like Italy built this, you know, as an embassy. I mean, Washington, if you're going to have a presence in Washington and you're Italy, you want to have a showcase.
Right.
If you can afford it, you want a showcase. Here's here's Sri Lanka.
Oh my god.
Here's the Polish ambassador's house. So if you would have a nice place for your ambassador to live, and a place for garden parties. See back there. And this is Hillary Clinton's house up here where the cops are. Somebody told me one time she has bulletproof shades.
Here on the right.
Mm-hmm. That's her house.
Her current house?
Well, she spends most of her time there, I think. I mean, I don't think she and Bill Clinton live together. I don't think they have for years. Because he's got another girlfriend.
He does not.
Oh, yes, he does.
Yeah.
No.
The
sir.
code name for the Secret Service code name for her is the Energizer. Just look up the Energizer Bill Clinton and you'll see pictures of her.
No.
Yes. I'm telling you, yes. I mean, do you think they have a normal marriage? Maybe it's good you're in Washington. We'll disabuse you of some of your illusions here. Do you think that Bill and Hillary Clinton have a normal relationship?
What if our
I
marriage
don't
was like
think
that,
any-
honey?
I don't
Come
think
on.
Any president.
I mean, any normal
Relationship
woman,
with a
unless she
celebrity.
needed to be his wife for political reasons,
Right.
until now, but
Would've
that's what
gone.
come on, any normal woman would have divorced this guy like 30 years ago.
Well, she
Yeah.
forgave him.
I
thought
don't,
that was
maybe
pretty
she did,
admirable.
technically. I mean, you know.
I thought that was
He
pretty
needs her. He can't be divorced. I mean, they wouldn't be able to do the things they're doing. The Clinton Foundation.
She got reamed for that, and I thought
Pardon?
it was pretty big of her.
Well, I think a lot of women saw, she gutted it up and stayed married to this
Yeah.
guy. But you have to wonder why, and the why, I'm sure, is he wanted to, as Clinton said, when he wanted to join ROTC to maintain his political viability.
Yeah.
And now there's no reason. It'll be interesting to see what happens now that she's not running for anything. Although she's going to be running for mayor of New York,
Seems
apparently.
like a little faltering to me.
Who, Clinton?
Yeah.
Somebody I know who's a neurologist
Seems off.
said there's some kind of disease, and she said what it was. This is like the worst thing you could ever imagine. It's a combination of Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah, it's like a.
And he
it's like a
apparently, she says Hillary Clinton's got something strange too, and I can't remember what she said. Yeah, she said he manifests all the symptoms that
Just, he looks confused every once in a while.
Yeah.
Very slightly, just for a second.
and he's become kind of an open mouth breather.
Yeah, he
Have you
wasn't
noticed
like
that?
before.
No, he wasn't. Well, he had a heart attack too. Remember?
Oh, that's right.
He stopped eating at McDonald's. He would go jogging for like a mile or two, and then he'd go eat 3 Big Macs
Yeah.
to counteract the effect of exercise.
Well, Trevor loved McDonald's till he started working.
Well, that's the thing. I worked in a hot dog plant one time, and I was at a baseball game, and I thought, this was like years later, and I'd sworn I'd never eat a hot dog. This is the mosque. This is the largest mosque in Washington. This is the Islamic Center.
Now, did Hillary maintain or still live in that house? while
She's
she
been
was a
spending
senator?
time. When she was in the Senate, yes, she lived there.
Ah,
And when she was Secretary of State, she lived there. And when she was running for president, she lived there. And now she's been spending time in New York.
She probably.
I mean, you'd see from time to time, showing people that house, you'd see Homa Wiener on the front porch. This is interesting here now. So there's the street Obama lives on. Obama's moved over here. And that's Obama's new street. He rents a house down there for $22,000 a month. This is the headquarters of Russian military intelligence right here.
Oh my gosh! Right across the street.
Right across the street from Obama, right up the street.
Oh my god!
shows how effective
So
it
Obama's
was.
house is down that street. Obama's in Tahiti with 54 guys.
Yeah. Right.
The most romantic place on the face of the earth, and he's there for a month with 54 guys, maybe longer.
He deserves
And this is Ivanka Trump's house,
Oh,
Which
really?
one?
right here on the corner with all the do not walk on the sidewalk stuff. And here's the Secret Service guarding her house. People are PO'd in this neighborhood about the traffic in front of her house, the Secret Service traffic. But this is the most expensive neighborhood in Washington. It's called Coloramo. And homes here cost into the 60s, 50s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I mean, this is the kind of place you knock on the door and a butler answers the door.
Right. Huh.
They're not that big.
No.
Some are, but they go back,
50 million.
Well, you're paying to live in the neighborhood.
You see the palaces.
Shay, can
on
you take a
Mount-
left here? And we'll go.
Those are 20
We'll show you
million.
something.
Yeah.
But
I'll show you some. And Rex Tillerson lives here. The Secretary of State.
Jeff Bezos, he also
Jeff
just,
Bezos. We'll go down Jeff Bezos. The guy who owns Amazon just bought a house here.
Oh.
That's Tillerson's house. This one needs a little upkeep. But I mean, some of these things are, by local standards, kind of simple. I mean, look at this. Look at the stonework and everything. Really, look at this. But fixing these things up is a gigantic business. I mean, there were some workers on this the last time I was through here. They were about a month or two ago. They were building that. They're fixing that up. They're done. What do you see this coming up? I mean, U.S. presidents, as they climb the ladder of success, as secretary of this or whatever they might be in the government, as they made their way to the presidency, lived here. Like FDR lived here, Warren Harding lived in this neighborhood, William Howard Taft, Herbert Hoover lived here. Here's the French ambassador's house. Check this place out. This is one of the most expensive homes in Washington. This is about 60, probably in the
Now that's a
60s.
big one.
yeah, that's amazing.
And I went in there once for a party, and there are medieval tapestries on the wall. I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's like a set from a movie. And here's this. I used to think this was the Mexican ambassador's house. It's not. The Mexican ambassador's house is in Spring Valley, which is it's unbelievable. But Mexican embassy property.
Mm.
This used to be the Libyan ambassador's house, and they're so tense about things. Look, there are bars on the second floor windows.
Yeah.
When you got bars on the second floor windows, there's some enemies out there.
You're either in South Central or Washington.
You're in South Central or Washington. Yeah. I love those neighborhoods in East Los Angeles where you have a nice neighborhood border and a bad neighborhood, and the street in the nice neighborhood there's a fence
Yeah.
cutting the street off.
Oh my.
Have you ever seen those?
No.
Oh my God, it's weird. So you'll have the street is cut off by a fence, so you can't drive through the neighborhood. I'll show you there are some houses down here that are interesting. We're going to head over to the White House. So this is Calorama, and there are some some of these things you think they're not much in a way looking at the outside. The insides will just blow you away.
So did you have all that access because of your newspaper doing?
Well, yeah. I mean, do you think anybody let me into their house? Otherwise, no. Yeah. That was one of the good reasons to be a journalist. Not anymore, because it's depressing and disgusting. There's the Irish ambassador's house. Here's the Chinese ambassador's house. Here is Jeff Bezos's house. Or wait a minute.
Yeah,
Yeah,
these
that
two.
one. This
Yeah,
one.
these
on the
two.
left. The two?
Yeah.
He bought both of them.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, it was the textile. He bought the textile
Yeah,
museum. That's
yeah.
both of them. Yeah.
Now it's gonna be one house.
30 million. This is where Woodrow Wilson lived. Wilson was the last president to leave office and stay in Washington, and now Obama's done it. And Wilson did it in 1921. So in almost 100 years, no president has ever stayed in Washington.
Is he staying till his daughter graduates?
Well, that's the cover story. It's obvious why he's staying. I mean, he was going to stay to sort of shepherd his legacy, assuming that there would be one.
Right.
And then
No, that
when
would
Hillary Clinton lost, he's staying. He has an office now. He's going to stay to stir up discontent. I think he's afraid. I don't know. Does the United States have an extradition agreement with Tahiti? It'll be interesting to see when and if he comes back, because it is getting very hot here now.
Oh really?
Oh, with Susan Rice? This is who told her to do this? And I mean, Brennan. If I were John Brennan, I would be not real comfortable at the moment. They were doing all this. I think they were doing it if they did it. I mean, I think the administration had people that they thought Trump and Trump's transition people would be in touch with. I mean, because that's what you do. You get in touch with ambassadors and with foreign countries. So here we are. We're in office, and let's be friends. That's kind of what you do. And so they got a warrant to surveil, certain people, foreign people, because you can't do this with Americans. And they were hoping, and I'm probably pretty certain, that Trump and for Trump's people would make phone calls to these people, and we'll tap the phone calls, which they did, and that's how they got rid of Flynn. Flynn just called the Russian ambassador to chit chat. He's the head of the National Security Agency, or the National Security Council, and he lied about what they had talked about to Pence, and that's why he got fired. He didn't get fired for calling the Russian ambassador. I mean, that's what you do. Here's Croatia, former Yugoslav Republic. There are 179 embassies in one. Here's Haiti.
Why would he lie about what he
I don't know. I mean, they maybe discussed sanctions. Who knows? But I mean, how would anybody know what Trump had said? I mean, at this point, Trump's president. How would anybody know? And this became a news story. What Trump said to the Australian president or the Mexican president on the phone, and that became a story. So he was obviously being bugged. Here's Romania. Here's Ireland. This is a popular place on St. Patrick's Day. Every free booze in the Irish Embassy on St. Patrick's. Here are a bunch of Greek embassy buildings.
€3 on.
But it's potentially worse than Watergate, because I mean, here's a sitting president bugging somebody in the opposition party, the president-elect and the president. I mean, if the White House ordered this, that's bad. I mean, you're talking like 30 years in jail.
Maybe the Australian president just said what they talked about.
No, because they had the exact conversation. I mean, maybe he would have, but I mean, they had verbatim conversation between Trump and the Australian president, and they said the Australian president hung up on him,
Oh.
which didn't happen.
The first of many.
And yet the Australian, when that became known, the Australian president came out and said, "No, what are you talking? No, I didn't."
Oh, he did?
So they were spinning it. you know, this is really bad. This is the Cosmos Club here. Washington is full of clubs. Here's the Indian Embassy, and there's a statue of Mahatma Gandhi out in front there. This is my favorite. Look at this. This is the Indonesian Embassy. This was lived in by Evelyn Walsh McLean, who owned the Hope Diamond. That was her house.
We're gonna go see them.
That was her house.
Wow.
And I guess her descendants said, look, let's sell this thing. And here's the Portuguese embassy. This is an area called DuPont Circle. This is
Oh, this is DuPont
this
Circle.
is DuPont Circle.
We're close to our hotel.
Not really.
Ish.
Not really.
No?
Well, you kind of.
Is
Well,
that
you're,
way? Isn't
it
there's
walkable?
20. Is that 21st? Your hotel is on 21st,
Yeah.
Is it
basically.
walkable?
Yeah, 15 minutes.
There was a restaurant I wanted to go to.
Where?
Griffin?
I don't know.
It's on Hampshire.
Oh, New Hampshire.
Yeah.
That may be down by you, because there are a lot of restaurants on New Hampshire down
halfway between DuPont Circle and our hotel.
there. Well, here's New Hampshire right here.
That's probably walkable.
So you could walk up New Hampshire, and from your hotel you could be here in like 10 or 15 minutes, depending how fast you want to walk. But it's a nice neighborhood to walk through.
Yes.
Pretty houses and
Like, could you imagine the party? You must have people from all over the world in one place
where
at a party.
you could Washington. When we get to the White House, you're going to hear a dozen languages at least.
Wow.
You have people from all over the world here.
We've heard a lot of French so far,
So cool.
That's interesting.
especially in Alexandria.
Huh, interesting. Because you don't find many French tourists here. A lot of Brits, a lot of Canadians, a lot of Australians,
Do you have a lot of Chinese?
a lot of Chinese.
A ton of Chinese at we have an outlet mall in our town that's
Mhm.
somewhat new.
Mm-hmm.
And
A lot of Chinese?
buses of Chinese.
No kidding.
Yeah.
You don't even go on the weekends because it's a wow.
But this area, this is kind of like Melrose in Los Angeles. This is
Yeah.
hip clothing, and then it's like Greenwich Village a little bit too, or North Beach. People with manifestos and poetry readings and all this kind of thing, and bookstores. We're back on Massachusetts Avenue. We were on Massachusetts and we were coming down to Embassy Road there. Here's the Brookings Institution. This is the largest liberal think tank in Washington here on the left. Here's the Uzbek Embassy on the right. Here's the Johns Hopkins School of Advanced International Studies there on the right. But there are, what's another thing, like embassies, there are hundreds of think tanks in Washington. And they're funded by corporations a lot of times, or by individuals maybe want to try to influence the government in one way or another. The largest conservative think tank is the Heritage Foundation on Capitol Hill, but they're all over the place. The Heritage and Brookings are the biggest of the right and left think tanks. But you find stuff, every conceivable trade association or any kind of group that's trying to do anything, in the area of influencing politicians to do what they want them to do has an office here. Lots of universities have campuses here, like the University of California is down the street here, building. So they would have a junior year in Washington kind of thing. Or a graduate school of, government relations or something like that, or government, political science or something. Here's the Philippine Embassy. Here's the Australian Embassy on the left. In fact, one of those buildings over there is the University of California, Washington campus.
Oh, look at their
I love the Australians never pass up an opportunity to do some advertising.
Qantas.
Yeah, Qantas paid, of course. That makes Sydney look like someplace you want to go immediately, doesn't it? And here's 16th Street. This is Scott Circle. There's the Washington Monument up there.
Looks like an Irishman.
You saw an Irishman? An Irishman has been
He looks
sighted?
like an Irishman. Bright red hair.
That's usually a giveaway. Here's the Jefferson Hotel. Washington is full of these nice little boutique hotels. That's a nice one, the Jefferson. And the
Oh, look
White
at the
House.
doorman, guys.
Doorman,
Look at that.
4 or 5
Don't see
guys.
that.
There's a hotel up here, the Hay Adams, actually. I think we're going to stop in front of it. They've got about 5 people opening the door for you.
Wow.
All of this across the street here is National Geographic. This is the original National Geographic headquarters on the corner there.
Oh, very cool.
And that big white building that you're going to see here in a second on the right is where the magazine is published and edited, but this is all National Geographic. They just they'll build a building, or they'll have a building, they'll take over a building maybe in some cases, and they'll just build something else, and they connect everything that they've ever owned here.
We do some shows for because National Geographic is a Fox
Did
channel now.
a thing going with Fox?
And we do, well, Fox owns them now.
Fox owns the National Geographic Channel?
Yes.
Interesting. Did not know that.
And we do a live safari, and people from Washington come to LA to produce that.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
This used to be the Soviet embassy on the left, and this is now the Russian ambassador's house. So that was the Soviet embassy from 1933 to 1991. Then it became the Russian embassy for a couple of years. Then everything moved to that place we just saw. So the United States, when the Bolsheviks took over the Russian Empire in 1917, the United States did not recognize the Soviet Union as a country for 17 years. You know, we're not going to side with these people. You know, they're murdering everybody, and et cetera, et cetera. And then in 1933, Franklin Roosevelt, his administration recognized the Soviet Union. So from 1933 then until 1991, the United States had diplomatic relations with the USSR through that place right back there. And then and the USSR went out of existence in 91.
Business went out of business.
That was fun to watch. I was there. I mean, it was really fun to watch.
That's amazing.
You could see something brewing, though, for a couple of years. I mean, not so much the whole place collapsing, but Russians would not accept their own money. You know, when you won't take your own money,
wow,
they would. There was what they called hard currency with dollars, francs, marks, pounds, even lira. They would prefer to rubles. In rubles, you couldn't take rubles out of the country and spend them, and nobody would translate them into anything else. So if you were in Russia and you were paid in rubles, it was okay because you could use rubles to buy stuff, but you couldn't buy. There were a couple of businesses. There was a Swiss supermarket. There was a big Finnish department store that sold food too, and they wanted hard currency. So if you were Russian and you didn't have hard currency, you're doomed to live on the Russian economy in a sense.
Yeah.
I guess we can hop that right here, up the street here. Here's the Hay Adams Hotel. This is one of the original churches in Washington here. We have to take a look in there. I wonder if it is open. Let's go in there.
Yeah, we went to the church in
St.
Alexandria yesterday.
Christ Church. Isn't that interesting?
That was amazing.
Yeah. Did you go to Washington's Pew?
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing to see that? And this is St. John's Episcopal Church. If you were a Protestant living in the American colonies, chances are you were an Anglican. And the Anglican Church was created, remember, by Henry VIII. He wanted to get divorced. Everybody's Catholic. And he wanted to get divorced, and the Pope said, no way, no way. So he goes, okay, two can play this game. And so he creates the Church of England, which the monarch heads, and he basically gives himself a divorce. So during the American Revolutionary War period, the Anglican Church, I mean, this was bad news. If you were an Anglican, you had to kind of practice your religion kind of underground. And a lot of people left what would eventually become the United States. They wanted to stay loyal to the crown, and they go to Canada. And they are kind of the Canadian Mayflower people, the loyalists, they were called. If you go, and when I was working for the Sun, traveling around with the Orioles, I remember the first time we went to Toronto, we're on the bus coming in from the airport to go to the hotel, and I remember this big green highway sign, and it said, Loyalist Parkway right. And I went, Loyalist Parkway, what the hell that is? And I had no idea what it meant. And I asked the guy at the hotel, I said, what's Loyalist Parkway? What's that mean? And he said, oh, those were the people who left the American colonies and came to Canada. You know, like as an up yours to the Americans.
Yeah, Loyalists also went to the Bahamas.
They went to
as
the
well,
Bahamas.
yeah.
The smart ones went to the Bahamas. Well, there's the British see the Revolutionary War a little bit differently. They don't see it as this defeat by these 17 teenagers, in the American colonial army. Yeah. They thought we can make more money. Hell with the American colonies. We can make more money in the Caribbean. So we're gonna keep our stuff in the Caribbean. I mean, you can have all this crap.
Really?
Take it. This is Lincoln's pew right here. This is where Abraham Lincoln would come over here during the Civil War.